Hi, I'm Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doc. I've helped retailers sell millions of dollars worth of products all over the world. And one of the ways we do that is to increase add-ons. Add-ons are something that someone's already bought one item and you add on something else, right? So think if you're ordering a hamburger, the fries are extra, the server suggests them, or you have a great dinner and they suggest the dessert, that kind of thing, right? Well, you have to start with something small. So you know what this is? This is a hair massager, and I learned this trick from Patricia Fripp. And a hair massager is about $5, and it's the easiest thing you could add on because if you have long hair, particularly, it's easy to get the shampoo and the conditioner in. But anybody, guys with less hair like me, it's a scalp massager. It's only $5. This would be the perfect thing for a salon to have every one of their hairdressers, salon professionals suggest and demonstrate to the crew, right? It's like $5. No one has to think about this. It's the easy thing to do. Well, this is the point that sometimes we go through and we sell something and then we want the add-on to be like a service contract for an extra $50 a month. And someone's got to think like, yeah, I don't know that I want that. And the crew has to think like, what a waste. So you want to start off by training your crew with something easy, and something under $5 is easy. So like in the shoe care industry where I started, it was I got a spiff of 50 cents for every shoe cleaner I sold. And connecting that performance to them getting something out of it is going to let them understand that add-ons are something easy, and especially if there's something that they can see is fairly cheap, and more importantly, they can see the value in, you're going to spend your time training this really well to get them comfortable with the concept before you move on to something else. What do you think? Put in comments below, and I will see you later for another tip about how to retail great in 2024.